So what do people assume that isn't quite true about you?
I'm a little silly. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Um, I think, boy, that's a hard one because I know that there
Yeah.
are different assumptions that are made. One of the things, actually, it's just an outright accusation that I've received is that I write using AI. I do not. AI has really demolished my voiceover career to a great extent. I have no love for it at all.
Wow.
Um, it has stolen long-standing relationships away from me as far as producers I've worked with. It has really greatly reduced our income.
Mm.
Um, it has pitted author against author. It is at a great cost environment. It's responsible for the dumbing down of society in many ways and misinformation. So I will never write using AI. I don't believe in it.
Mm.
Assistive, uh, essentially, like, no problem, not at all. But generative AI, where you are outsourcing the creation to someone else, that's not me. That's an assumption that's been made because I publish quickly and I put books out quickly. But nothing could be further from the truth.
Wow. So with AI, the big question with AI. So do you think AI actually helps in society in any form, in this current form right now? And what I mean by
Um,
that
I,
is how humans are utilizing it.
yeah, I've seen videos where I don't know exactly how this works, but like AI equipped limbs, prosthetic limbs that help people walk again after injury in a war, or Afghanistan, wherever. I don't entirely know how you could have a smart leg or a smart arm. I just don't understand that. But hey, if it's a thing, I absolutely support it. If it's going to restore like natural mobility and make someone ambulatory again, I think
Yeah.
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Where it's used to replace creators, I think that's a travesty. So yeah, that's where I stand.
Okay. Okay. I want to take it back a little bit. I remember you said in previous interviews that you wrote a story in second grade called the Electric Boy, if I'm not
I
mistaken.
did. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So, what did that little kid that was inside you already see about the world that made you want to write such a just amazing book?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily put it in the amazing category.
Well, I
As a
mean,
kid, it
at
was.
your age, you probably thought you was doing some dynamic work, as a kid.
Oh my gosh. I do remember getting it back. And this is, you have to remember, back in second grade, you're entrusted with construction paper and kid scissors and, college roll 3-hole punch paper. I wrote it, and it was a blatant ripoff of Alan Dean Foster's novelization of E.T. at the time. 7-year-olds don't understand copyright infringement.
Yeah.
And some of the things that were in that I put in the Electric Boy. I just remember writing it and holding it in my hand, finished product when I was done, holding it in my hand, turning it around and showing people the cover and going, look what I did.
Yeah.
Holy cow, I did this. It was a light bulb watershed epiphany moment for me, and really showed me what I could do in the future.
Aaron Ryan is a Seattle-based, best-selling, award-winning, in multi-genres artist, speaker, and voice actor whose current public persona and identity sits in an intersection of storytelling, self-publishing, screen adaptation, and creative resilience. Right now, what makes him timely is that his catalog is so vast and multitude. But the fact that he's actively building across different formats at once, to me, like with novels, audiobooks, he narrates himself. Like you said, with screen adaptation, it is very, very unique and very, very, I would say, groundbreaking. Thank you so much for being on the show.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So let's get into it. The big question, why writing?
Well, it's funny because I can look back on all the different vocations that I've had. I've had a lot of different jobs and positions in life, but the vocations, the careers, have all had to do with storytelling. So as a voice actor right now and an author, I'm on dual storytelling tracks, parallel storytelling tracks. But before that, I was a corporate and wedding videographer. I would preserve videos on DVD and in file format, audio in on CD and file format. I would record for posterity, elderly folks telling their life story for their family members and making a video out of it. It was all storytelling. As a voice actor, I tell other people's stories. So one of the truest, rawest forms, if not the truest raw of storytelling, is writing a book. And I pivoted from authoring or from voice acting a little bit in 2023 because of a very toxic online community of voice actors and because of the continuing eroding pay scale due to AI and lowballing clients and underbidding colleagues. And I just returned to authoring, and I have no regrets. I'm so grateful for being in a position where I can write stories. That's the most passionate thing that I have as far as a vocation.
That's amazing. When people meet Aaron Ryan right now, what do you most hope they understand about you beyond your book covers and all the different things that they see in your bio?
I would hope that they would just recognize passion right away. I mean, my branding is sci-fi enthusiast at heart because I love sci-fi. I'm very enthusiastic. Yay! And I have a lot of heart in my novels. So I want them to get that. I want them to receive that and know that there's no ulterior motives. I'm just a joyful person by nature with a lot of gratitude about what I do. So I hope they would catch the branding and just come away with encouragement. Like, gosh, that was a great guy and a little silly, but what a great guy with some great stories. So that's what I hope.
So, what do people assume that isn't quite true about you?
That I'm a little silly. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I think, boy, that's a hard one because I know that there are different assumptions that are made. One of the things, actually, it's just an outright accusation that I've received is that I write using AI. I do not. AI has really demolished my voiceover career to a great extent. I have no love for it at all.
Wow.
It has stolen long-standing relationships away from me as far as producers I've worked with. It has really greatly reduced our income. It has pitted author against author. It is a great cost environment. It's responsible for the dumbing down of society in many ways and misinformation. So I will never write using AI. I don't believe in it.
Mm.
Assistive um, usage, no problem not at all. But generative AI, where you are outsourcing the creation to someone else, that's not me. That's an assumption that's been made because I publish quickly and I put books out quickly, but nothing could be further from the truth.
Wow. So, with AI, the big question with AI. So, do you think AI actually helps in society in any form, in this current form right now? And what I mean by that
I
is how humans are utilizing it.
Yeah, I've seen videos where I don't know exactly how this works, but like AI equipped limbs, prosthetic limbs that help people walk again after, injury in a war, or Afghanistan, or wherever. I don't entirely know how you could have a smart leg or a smart arm. I just don't understand that fully. But hey, if it's a thing, I absolutely support it. If it's going to restore like natural mobility and make someone ambulatory again, I think that's fantastic. Where it's used to replace creators, I think that's a travesty. So yeah,
Mm.
that's where I stand.
Okay. Okay. I want to take it back a little bit. I remember you said in previous interviews that you wrote a story in second grade called The Electric Boy, if I'm not
I
mistaken.
did. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So, what did that little kid that was inside you already see about the world that made you want to write such a just amazing book?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily put it in the amazing category.
Well, I
As a
mean,
kid, it
at
was,
your age, you probably thought you were doing some dynamic work, as a kid.
my gosh. I do remember getting it back. And this is, you have to remember, back in second grade, you're entrusted with construction paper and kid scissors and, college rule 3-hole punch paper. I wrote it, and it was a blatant ripoff of Alan Dean Foster's novelization of E.T. at the time. 7-year-olds don't understand copyright infringement.
Yeah.
And some of the things that were in that I put in the Electric Boy, I just remember writing it and holding it in my hand, the finished product when I was done, holding it in my hand, turning it
Hmm.
around and showing people the cover and going, "Look what I did."
Yeah.
Holy cow, I did this. It was a light bulb watershed epiphany moment for me and really showed me what I could do in the future.
See, I like that. I like that. And they said imitation is the greatest form of flattery. And I think when it comes to especially with writing and getting your writing voice, you start off with the people that mean the most to you, right? Before you actually discover your own voice. It's the same way with music. I used to love music, actually compose and create music a lot. And I
That's
used to
great.
yeah, I love rap, love hip hop. I used to try to rap like Ludacris back in the day. And then I realized I'm not Ludacris because
Right.
Ludacris is very and so but I started with my earlier works. Oh my goodness, it was a blatant, like, off, like, what is he trying to be, Ludacris' little brother or something? That's what people would think. And then so I developed my own voice, so I do get that 100%.
You have to. I'm
Yeah.
a massive Lord of the Rings fan. This ring around my neck is similar to what Frodo wore around his ring in Lord of the Rings. This is different because it has my family's names engraved on it, but
Okay.
Tolkien, J.R.R. Tolkien, I am not. Nor should I try to be.
Mhm.
Pay homage to him, or if I do it in my books, I think that's okay, and I think that's very respectful. But yeah, I learned early on I am no Tolkien.
And
Painful.
that's and that's okay, that is okay. When I even found about him as an author, how he created his own, like, literally world,
And language.
languages. Oh my god, I was like, "This dude is sick with it." Man, like, this
Yeah.
is crazy. So, man, him and C.S. Lewis have a special place in my heart.
They're beautiful, both of them. They're part of the original club of the Inklings at Oxford. They formed that
Yeah.
little club and they would meet and talk about. I remember there's a story of J.R.R. Tolkien presenting a snippet of his. I don't know if it was The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings, but the Inklings, and C.S. Lewis read it and he's experiencing this, and he literally said, "Not another effing elf." And I just love. I think that's so funny that that came from C.S. Lewis. So
Yeah.
funny.
Under the former stage name that you had, I think it was, Joshua Alexander, you built a series of footprints, for yourself, especially with, voiceovers in that world, especially hundreds of books, and then also, I think you had blog posts and different things. What did that chapter give you as an author that still, I think you value and use right now in your current, uh
Well, if you for those joining us on video, you can see behind me there's a whole bunch of images of my book. It's my back books, I should say. It's my backdrop. Some of those, most of those are fiction, but some of them are nonfiction. And as a voice actor, I wrote six books that I wrote and published that are largely business guides that are loaded with inspiration and business experience and acumen and satire, just to try to balance that. And so that really taught me the satirical part of it in particular taught me that I could write fiction again. It'd been a long time since I had written fiction because satire is humor that is based largely on fiction, I believe, IMHO. And so writing those books, it brought me back to writing. It brought me back to scribing and publishing books and holding them in my hand and going, look, see what I did. I think it really set the stage for me to return as a fiction author because, the last one was published, I believe, in 2019. Um, and then I returned to fiction authoring in 2023 and started writing that again when I noticed the career and the industry eroding. Nonfiction is way different of a process than fiction. You're not really creating. You're merely speaking from experience or observation or insight. Whereas fiction, you have to you have to write a compelling narrative and invent all of these and scenarios and everything else. So totally different, but it brought me closer back to that career as a storyteller in its raw form.
Now, you did, I guess, allude to the differences of nonfiction and fictional work. I guess, what is more dynamic for you as you return back to that space in 2023?
Well, the dynamism of fictional authoring, man, it takes a lot and it
Mhm.
goes a lot slower. I can burn through a nonfiction book and publish it tomorrow because it just your fingers are going to fly and it doesn't really require all of this inventive, really like strong, intense creativity. And the narratives, you want to in fiction, you want the narratives to be very compelling, you want the characters to be compelling, and they take a lot of refinement as you go through revisiting them, changing things, updating this and that. But nonfiction, for example, I was writing the second installment in the Talisman series. This is my all-in-one version. This one, Nexus, was so hard, was one of the hardest books I've ever written.
Yeah.
Serious writer's block. I had to just kind of put the kibosh on that for a while, just pause. And then I got to put this down and stop writing this. And because I didn't know where to go with it. So that gave rise to me taking an off ramp from the fiction highway and returning to something that is far more personal, closer to home, passionate about, and that's what gave birth to "You Are My Whole Earth: A Daddy's Love for His Sons." This book right here, and it's just something I wanted to write because I say that to my boys. But man, taking the break from writing Talisman Nexus, which was so hard, returning to nonfiction and writing something personal and transparent and vulnerable went so fast. And it taught me, yes, my fingers can type, my heart can work. Let's do this. You reapproach fiction with a renewed sense of confidence, of self-confidence. And so then I was ready to return to that installment again.
You being such an array and have done such an array of things, do you get consulted a lot as a SME for different, I would say, aspects of from voice acting to writing novels to doing music and the different things of that nature?
Yeah, not so much music anymore because I'm not really working on promoting music. I think I put out my Swan Song CD in 23, and it was great. It was wonderful, and I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud of how I feel like I ended my musical career. But yeah, I would get consulted from time to time on how I go about producing this CD or that book or this voiceover, and I very much enjoy it. I don't really take on the mantle of a business coach or a writing coach or a voiceover coach. I left a very toxic online voiceover community where I was a business coach for a while. So I'm not really active in that community anymore. But authors, man, I'm an active contributing member of the Authors Guild. I'm on Reddit talking with people and answering questions, sharing experiences. I do that through my blog. I do it through my private Facebook group. And I love sharing what lessons I've learned, particularly as it pertains to scammers, because as an author, we are beset by scammers every single day. God bless them. I get about 30 emails at least every single day from scammers. And it's a rich privilege, actually, to help budding or established authors learn how to avoid that.
When did you know that authoring wasn't just that one lane for you when it comes to creativity, but a lane? But I know that lane kind of like felt like it's like the most at home for you.
Well, writing that book in second grade was kind of a light bulb moment of, look what I can do. I can actually do this. And then I was in authoring a young authors club. I completely forgot about that, Michael. I actually was looking through an old album and I see a newspaper clipping from, I don't even remember. It was like 2000, sorry, 1983, something like that. And my mom had clipped it and sent it to me. And, there's my name in the newspaper clipping of a young authors club at Snoqualmie Elementary or North Bend Elementary way back then. And I'd absolutely forgotten. It was like, oh my gosh, the memories come flooding back. And I look at that and go, of course I'm an author now. Of course I'm an author. Look at this. But then, man, I was primed by that, but I was really, really certified. This is what I want to do when I read
Mhm.
The Lord of the Rings for the very first time, discovering the world building that he's done, the richness of the narrative, the compelling nature of the stakes and the characters. It was so vast and so deep and so broad. I was like, I want to do this. I just remember that. Yeah.
So what feels different when the story becomes yours when you're the author putting pen to paper?
What was the question? What becomes different?
Yeah, what's the feel that I guess the difference in the feel for you as an author when you start putting pen to paper or I guess keys to a keyboard?
Yeah. Maybe that's why I didn't understand it. Like, what's this archaic system of using pens and papers?
Yeah.
Yeah, I write on stone tablets. I don't know about you, but I absolutely love. So I work backwards actually because I'm just generally bad in every respect. But I love designing first. So I'll get a concept of a cover for a book, and that if that cover is compelling enough, I really want to write a like narrative to match that cover, right?
Yeah.
So I work backwards and I reverse engineer my books in that way where I'll go with the cover. I love the cover and I want to write a story that matches the allure of that cover. When I get
Uh,
into that story, there's going to be times of super adrenaline um, production of the book, and there's going to be slower times where I'm just not quite in the writing zone. But man, when I get there, look out because I can become what's his name, the X-Men Juggernaut.
check. Okay.
You can't stop me until I'm going to finish this book tonight. I just
Yeah. Okay.
and I love that process because you're just so engrossed in the story.
Okay. On Reddit and different mediums, you publicly made a distinction between plot and story. And you seem to care more about when the story has an emotional tail to it, right? So then, like, usually the plot being perfect. What made that lane stick out for you?
Well, you need to have substance in your books, of course. If it's not a compelling story, people are just, the cover might be great, but they're going to read the book and go, there's no substance to this. There's no weight or gravity or stakes that I'm picking up on. And people want that. In this day and age, people read books, this has been true for a while, but I think especially now, people read books because they want escapism. And, you can't escape to anywhere if there's nowhere to go in your story. It's hard to give them somewhere to go if your story doesn't have that to begin with. So I'm very concerned about the heart behind my story. I'm very concerned about the thematic depth that I need to make sure and incorporate. For example, Dissonance is an alien invasion hexalogy. It's 6 books. Yes, there's aliens in them, but it's not a uh-oh, there's aliens here and they're gonna eat us at the end. There's a human survival struggle at the core of Dissonance. There's a lack of harmony in there, thus the word dissonance. You understand that as a musician, that's where I came from. And you have to have this conflict that is greater than what the protagonists actually see in the moment, and the story just needs to grow and grow and grow. There's just so much that goes into a book. And I've refined them over the years, gone back, retooled some stuff like George Lucas. Sorry, but you got to write something compelling to give them an escape with. Otherwise, they're just gonna kind of go, "This is a dumb story."
Yeah, it's very true, very true. And you talked about dissidence. You kind of described it as more than just like an alien invasion story, almost a study in human dishonesty. Why, or disharmony? Like, why was that? I would say, why was that story like? Why was that a deep story for you that you wanted to tell?
Well, the disunity that comes from, if 85% of the population has been wiped out by aliens, then you would think that the rest of us would be working together to kick the aliens to the curb. But we're always in our own way. We're always our own worst enemies. And we always find that there are elements among us who are just purely selfish does them a disservice. It doesn't describe it in full enough detail. The people who are so willing to throw others under the bus, to put
Uh,
themselves forward at no, no matter the cost. And it's a referendum. It becomes a referendum on how tragic our society has become in that we are so self-absorbed. Here, organs coming, let me trip you so it can get you and I'll run faster. Let me sprinkle you with some salt and some ketchup. And then, you'll make you that much more succulent for the Gorgon, and then I'm out of there. We're terrible. We're terrible species.
so I guess what were the aliens in your story allowing you really to say about humanity that I
Oh, that
think
that
we need?
yeah, that mankind is really the worst enemy. I mean, these things are terrifying. They have a paralyzing gaze and a telepathic paralytic, so that if you ever lock eyes with them, they're going to paralyze you where you stand. They're going to eat you at their leisure. You're sentient. You're going to feel every single agonizing bite. And as horrible as that is, you still have mankind to contend with. You still have people, figureheads at the top that it sucks, but you still have to deal with them. You thought the war was over, and you still got to deal with these malefactors.
Yeah. You kind of talked about here as well as like how you like to write. And before you said you in different forms, you like to write at least 5 pages a day. What actually are you protecting them? What actually made that discipline, that motivation, that identity for you to continually write 5 pages a day? That's wow, that's a lot. To me, that is.
Yeah, well, Stephen King, I can't remember exactly what it was, but Stephen King, I think, has a minimum. He wants to write like, 5,000 words a day or 1,000 words a day or something like that. I
Uh-huh.
think it's probably, I can't remember. Anyway, he's got a standard that he wants to adhere to, and I love the discipline of that. Now, my authoring career is somewhat still propelled by urgency because of the continuing erosion of the voiceover side of things. So I'm a little bit pressed to write my story. I have to have it on my calendar. Write, WRITE exclamation mark, and have these big blocks of writing time. Otherwise, the story is, you know, one of the hardest things is if you're not engrossed and immersed in that story consistently, you'll forget what happened in your own story, and it'll recede into the back of your mind and get kind of lost in the white noise of life. It behooves you, and it behooves you for the reader's sake, to stay in it, to stay diligent at it, and to continue to write. Otherwise, you're going to forget. And then there's going to be plot holes because of that.
Now, we kind of talked about it when we talked about AI, right? When it comes to people writing their books and stuff with AI, or not using AI as an assistant, but using AI to actually write, the total books. I notice AI right now is just trying to take over the voiceover industry. What has that been like for you? I know you're not part of that community anymore, but I know you probably still keep an ear out, especially with certain people that you probably still connected to. What is that doing for that community?
Well, for both communities, you're seeing the replacement of human creatives, and I think that's so sad. I mean, I've had longtime production partners that I've worked with that are producers, and they've either been themselves replaced because their higher ups have said, we're going to have Dance create this for us. We no longer need you. Or why don't you just, take the script that we have generated, throw that into Respeecher or Speechalo or 11 Labs or Speech Ocean or whatever. And then whatever audio files come of that, the TTS comes of that, we'll use that. It'll be good enough. So we no longer hire human voice talent. So that's been really hard. I mean, I've seen our income erode. I've seen our livelihood get chipped away at. Thank God I'm currently the voice of United Healthcare and others. But United Healthcare is a behemoth, and I'm so grateful for all the union work that has come of that. That's the voiceover side. The authoring side, AI has pitted author against author. You wrote this with AI. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. It's dumbed down society. We don't know what's real anymore when we see these videos and photos. It has been the cause of misinformation. It is a wild west of unregulated usage that gives no credit to who it was trained by, gives no remuneration to the backs. It's been trained backs of creatives for several decades now with no accreditation, no remuneration, no consent. So it is just it's a wild west that needs to be reined in. I don't feel
Yeah, yeah. So we can move on from it. You kind of said before that someone's endorsement of you or lack thereof has very left to do like has very little to do with your trajectory. Can you
Yeah,
speak about that a little bit more?
I'd love to. I was given that quote by entrepreneur slash casting agent Liz Atherton. Hi, Liz. And I love that quote. I just, as a creative, it doesn't matter what creative you are, author, poet, actor, producer, artist, whatever. We put things out there that are gifts from our heart to the world. And we want the world to partake of it. That doesn't mean that they will. As an author, I'm going to speak from the authoring perspective. Someone may not be buying your books. You may not be getting positive reviews. You may not be asked to speak at functions as an author. You may not be accepted by a traditional publisher. Whoever, their endorsement of you or lack thereof has very little to do with your trajectory. Whether or not you are getting the acclaim or the sales or the reviews that you hope for, if this is truly your calling, if authoring is truly your calling, you'll stick to it. The acclaim may and will or may come, But if this is your calling, you stick to it regardless of the response or lack thereof.
You know, just hearing you talk about that sounds it is wise. It's wise words. But I notice for me in my life in my journey that a lot of wise words come from a lot of pain. Pain of going through a process, right? And realizing that it's not where I guess it's not what you thought. So, what do you have to go through really to believe, I guess, in that statement, and to believe in what you're doing?
Well, that phrase was actually imparted to me by Liz during a time where I was really feeling frustration in the very toxic online voiceover community.
Mm,
Here I was, a little bit of an anomaly, somebody who just, like desperately wanted to just give and encourage and speak and share. And yet there was unfortunately a little bit of an Illuminati, as it were, at the top of the voiceover chain. They control who speaks, they control who gets affirmed, they control who gets, the acclaim and the representation and the esteem. And I genuinely wanted to give, and I found myself on the outside looking in all the time. I found myself, doing this. And I finally said, the heck with it. I'm tired of kissing the butts of the people who will never respect me. And I intentionally shot myself in the foot. I spoke truth to power. Some of the things I said were maybe a little bit less than charitable because I was angry.
yeah, yeah.
I was angry. Man, I have no regrets. I'm so glad that I did that because I was circling the drain. I was caught in an endless cycle of trying to win the approval of the endorsement of people.
Mm, mm.
And I broke away and I just saw a bounty, a boon of creativity that happened that year, which included producing like 3 or 4 CDs and starting my like jump starting restarting my authoring career. So, man, I have no regrets at all about leaving that community.
And then that was a season for you when it was heartfelt, but it was probably a season where you looked at all your talents and abilities and said, "Hey, you know what? I don't need to stay here anymore." So, do you still like wonder whether any of it was actually worth it? Like, like worth being in that space for so long before you decided that I need to break out and do what I need to do on my own?
Absolutely, it was worth it. I don't regret my involvement in the voiceover community or sewing into the voiceover community. I did a lot of things as a voiceover artist that are a little bit more of a surplus than the average voice actor or voiceover artist will do. I blogged 300 inspirational blogs. I wrote those 6 books that we mentioned. I was a business coach, voiceover business coach, and I helped, absolutely confident of that, helped other voiceover artists become more of a solid contender in the voiceover sphere. No regrets. No regrets over the blogs that I wrote and shared. No regrets over the books that I put out there. It's all a learning experience anyway. I love there's a quote and I forget who it's by, but he said, everything that happens to you is a resource. So as an author, that was so rich of an experience and I can draw upon that in some way.
You know, that's pretty amazing. And that's true. An author who hasn't lived a life is to me is not much of an author, but it sounds and just researching you a little bit about how you live your life, you can tell you put a lot of what you've been through and just your imagination out there. And you kind of spoke warmly a little bit earlier about your boys being your earth. I know in previous interviews you talked about your wife and sons. Um,
Yeah.
you know, how has fatherhood, changed the way you carry your ambition?
Gosh. Well, writing Dissonance, I'm a Christian. I'm going to say that. And I absolutely am a believer in Jesus and you're called to live a certain life as a Christian. So I struggled with some elements of writing Dissonance because I also wanted verisimilitude in there. I wanted grounded in reality. And so there is marginal profanity used in Dissonance. I'll never drop an F-bomb. I'll never take the Lord's name in vain with a GD or a JC. I'll never have graphic sex, drugs, bullying. I don't need it. My readers don't need it.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, if a Gorgon, a telepathic, freezing, eating alien is going to come at you and eat you, you're not necessarily going to go shuck.
Yeah.
You might say something else more colorful. So, I had that in there, but I was really convicted by it. And so I put an afterword in Dissonance Volume 1 Reality that just said, look, I apologize to my fellow Christians if you read that and you were offended by that. I wanted a dose of reality. And the reality is that people swear when they're stressed and scared in this day and age. So
100%.
I don't feel too bad about it anymore. But as a dad, my kids are someday going to read this, and I have to kind of brace for that. Dad, you told us not to swear. These guys are swearing. I'm like, I know, I'm sorry. And they're swearing. I'm not saying you should. Anyway, go to your room and we'll talk about it later.
Like C.S. Lewis, he's one of my favorite Christian artists, and then in this generation, I would say Ted Decker when he did the Green White series. He's one of the I would say authors I really look up to as well. So I mean, like, and then researching you and yourself and what you're doing, I'm like, yo, how did I miss this? Like, so I need to get after this. I really need to go on Amazon and buy your stuff. So I was like, man, I am so behind, and I feel like that. And you mentioning your family, in the warmest regards, that growth with your kids, and man, that's pretty amazing. Have you wrote any books about family life or growth of family of
Not in a fictional sense. No, they've all the latest one that is overtly about that is You Are My Whole Earth, and it's pictured over here. That's the last one. I mean, the kids books, I wouldn't have kids books over here if I didn't have kids. I wrote those
yeah,
picture
yeah.
books because I have a 10 and a 6-year-old. But the others are just fictional novels. But at the core of almost every single one of those, there's family, there's love and heart and parenting and fatherhood in many of them, and that comes from a place that's just true and authentic to me for sure.
Huh. When all books, um, audio, the speaking adaptations, everything come together, and and we're talking about you, and kind of, if we want to strip all that away, what kind of man do you most hope your family remembers?
Well, for my sons, I hope they know that they were utterly loved. I'm talking about, after I've died. I hope that my kids know that they're utterly loved. Um, my greatest book is still being written. Um,
Oh, I like
I'm
that.
I'm working. Well, I mean that in a very literal sense. I'm working on book number 45, but what I do virtually every single day, and I've done every single day almost since my oldest son was 2 months old, is I've kept a journal for both of my boys. And so
Mm,
there are things that we have done, milestones they've crossed, memories that we've shared, places we've gone, things they've learned, things I've learned that I want to share with them. And so virtually every single day for, going on 10 years now, I've kept a journal for them, and I'm going to put it in a book. I cannot wait to give it to them when they are 18 or 21, to show them how front of mind they've always been, how
mm,
important they are, and how loved they are. So I hope they remember that. And I hope my wife remembers me as a faithful husband who just simply wanted to do the two P's: protect and provide.
yeah. And my last question for you is, what is something you wish more people understood about you, or work that almost nobody really understands?
Well, it's a lonely career as an author. You genuinely want to have people enjoy the stories that you've written as much as you do.
Okay.
I never want to come across as begging or pleading, but spy and read my I never want to do that, but I want to do that sometimes because I want people to know, seriously, that's so felt because it's lonely. There's crickets. Your books rise up the charts and then they fade into obscurity. And it's like, man, you guys, look at all these books behind me. There's so many that you could enjoy. Read books, and more specifically, read my books because
Yeah.
you're going to love them and I put a lot of heart into them. I think one thing that authors are misunderstood about is their ability to remain sane after they've published something, because it is an insanifying process to write a book and then hear crickets. You want people to enjoy it.
And I do think being an author, it's like being vulnerable. It's what like making music is, I think it has some elements of that, but it's like bravado. You know what I'm saying? You're trying to display an image of yourself, usually of someone who's cool, who probably is introspective. But I think honestly, authors like yourself, you guys write from a place of vulnerability is unmatched. And I'm so happy to be one here to be a person that's asking you questions and get to share that with the viewers. So, with that said, what do you have going on that my viewers, my listeners can gravitate to and support?
Yeah. Well, I would I'm not sure how many people read horror. I'm actually my current work in progress is called Blood Echoes. It's my first overtly horror novel. And so I'm working on that right now. But I think what people might really be interested in is go to authoraaronryan.com or authoraaronryangroup.com. Author Aaron Ryan Group, if you are an author or an aspiring author, there's plenty of tips and videos to encourage you in there. There are discount codes and giveaways for books and sales that are happening. There's news and there's upcoming appearances and things like that. But there's also news on the screenplays, the books that I've had adapted for the screen and are being pitched to streaming networks or winning awards at festivals. There's news on that. But it's a great private group free of scammers. And I think everybody can say amen to that.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. So please, everyone, please go and support accordingly. Thank you so much, Aaron, for being on the show. We truly, truly appreciate you here and all that you have done with your 45 books. And the best is on its way. The best is on its way. So
That's right.
have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. Peace, guys.